Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Woohoo, it's Tuesday. I love Tuesdays. And I'm just kind of going down my timeline because there was one post that I posted that I really want to go over. And I also did actually talk about karma and reap what you sow. Those words are horrific, horrific, horrific. All right, here, I'm going to find that. Okay. So this is the one. This is the one that I really want people to really remember. So I talked about, treating symptoms. So whenever you're in the allopathic holistic and they are advertising symptom management, they're going to prescribe you some kind of mineral or anything that's part of the elemental makeup of the human. They're going to prescribe you something, and it may not be official. It may be just a recommendation, like you see in the holistic groups. They'll be like, oh yeah, I have a cold, so I'll take elderberry syrup. Okay, so they're going to recommend something for specific things, your friends as well as the allopathic. Anytime that you are dealing or you're mentioning a symptom, I don't care what it is, whether it's the flu, whether it's the cold, whether it's whatever, if there's a name for it in the medical world and you are trying to treat it, you're going to be over infusing yourself with some kind of element. So here we go. So when you treat symptoms such as candida or any other allopathic holistic vocabulary word describing manifestations of symptoms, you're going to cause imbalances to your body. So even the very thought of you even thinking from the standpoint that you're trying to take J juice to deal with your whatever issue, I don't care what it is, whether it's cancer, whether it's some kind of disease, whether it's some kind of autoimmune disorder, whatever name they have in the allopathic holistic, if you're coming into the J juice from the standpoint you're going to treat your specific issue, you already are 10 steps behind. Okay? So once you start compartmentalizing your body and you're trying to treat your symptoms, even with J juice, you will never, ever, ever, ever get the big picture. And somebody did that in the beginning, or somebody did that a couple of weeks ago. They were trying to take J juice for their abscess, and guess what? They didn't get the results they were looking for because they came into it already at a deficit of their understanding. When you're coming into J juice with the expectation that you're going to disappear your symptoms like that, you already lost. It's already done with for you. First of all, you let it get that bad. Second, you're trying to treat symptoms. You're trying to compartmentalize your body as if nothing was connected. Okay? So once you start compartmentalizing your body and trying to treat your symptoms, even with J juice, you'll never get the big picture. Any type of advertising for specific symptoms is based upon and predicated upon over infusing your body with elements, which will then eventually cause imbalances. This is the mentality of the allopathic holistic world, to go from one extreme to the other, playing yo-yo with all of your biochemistry, and then in the process you're going to leach the mineral reserves, trying to correct the issue from all of your symptom management protocols until you pass away. And many of you have already experiencing that. Look at the vegans and vegetarians. Go look at the ones that discriminate against certain foods. Go look at the ones that are afraid of foods. They're trying to stay away from certain foods, and they are taking away valuable minerals and valuable nutrition, micro and macronutrition. So when you are in the process, when you are avoiding certain things, when you're afraid of certain things, you're going to then starve your body of that nutrition, and you haven't fixed the issues. So what happens then is that your body is going to steal from all your mineral reserves to then fix the weaknesses, because you still have the weaknesses. Remember, everybody comes in at a deficit. Everybody. As soon as you're born, you're at a deficit. And now life / God / Buddha has given you the opportunity to correct those deficits. But if you don't correct those deficits, guess what? You have a certain kind of insurance policy of your body, which means you have a certain amount of density of nutrients in your bones, a certain amount of macronutrition and fat and proteins and everything in all of your body. And if you're not actively really fixing and correcting the highways and byways of your body is going to keep the heart going. Okay, it's going to keep your brain going. It's going to keep your lungs and your liver and your kidneys going. The vital organs are going to take the most precedent, which means that it's going to steal minerals, steal nutrition from other parts of your body. So when you see a vegan, a vegetarian, or someone that's completely like discriminatory in the holistic allopathic world, they are decaying. Look at Rick Simpson and the cannabis world. So many weaknesses in the cannabis world. And guess what? Aging is basically the body trying to keep the heart alive, stealing the reserves from your integumentary system, from your hair, from all of your other systems, until eventually there's be no more reserves left, and then the vital organs shut down. Some of you have come into with a very big insurance policy. You can afford to play the activism game. You can afford to get rid of your environment and play, oh God, you got to avoid this, you got to avoid that. Let's politicize everything. Some of you can afford to go drink and go on benders every so often. Some of you can afford to go and throw concrete and fill potholes and landscape and snowplow for years and years and years, until one day your body is going to then it's going to take a toll on you, and then all of those weaknesses that you've incurred over those years of just carelessness and activism is going to weaken not only parts of your body, but then your heart and your lungs and your liver and your brain, because it has to keep stealing reserves from your body because you haven't fixed the main cause, which is leaky gut. I came into this with the whole notion that candida and leaky gut, which is one of many factors, is the foundation of cancer, disease, and chronic illness. Yes, it's not the sole factor. It is one of many factors. Because when you have leaky gut, it means you have malabsorption. When you have malabsorption, it's like you're basically on a death sentence. And then all you got to do is just bring in some gas to kind of fuel you for the day, but you have no reserves, which means that when you have no reserves, you don't have a maintenance that's going to keep you living for a very, 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 very long time. And you're going to run through all of that, all of your gas, so to speak, pretty quick, because eventually the main engine parts like your heart and your brain are going to shut down from lack of reserves, because you can't seem to hold on to them. And the body, then you have other factors are going to go and come into play. So obesity, malnutrition, underweight, overweight, all the different symptoms, which is also activism too, and being afraid of your environment, your body is experiencing is based upon the biochemical triage that is stealing from all of your reserves to keep your heart, brain, and lungs, and kidneys, and liver going until you deplete your reserves. And there's nothing left for your vital organs. And some will deplete their reserves faster than others. So some of you have very scant, very minimal insurance policies. Others of you have come from great genetics. You have really hard bones. And so you can play the game and you have plenty of time to figure it all out. But some of you don't have much time. Your bones are soft. You're on stage 3, stage 4 cancer. You know, the biggest symptoms are when you guys are afraid of your environment. The biggest symptoms are the activism. The biggest symptoms are demonizing corporations that just deal with elements and just creating conglomeration of elements to help people who want the shortcuts, because that's what we've been taught. We've been taught in the allopathic / holistic world is to take shortcuts. Nobody understands how to really work for what it is they want, but people don't even know what they want. People say, I want to live, but then they do everything that will then conflict with living, because they're going to be taking elements that are like way imbalanced. Now, and some of the examples of it is the whole thing with the kombucha. When you're living the alkaline versus acidic lifestyle. Alkaline is where it's a conglomeration of minerals that overwhelm the system and kill everything in its path. It has a high negative type of reaction. So it just decimates everything. And then other people will go and take a bunch of acid, which has the same effect, but it's still on the other end of the spectrum. Okay. But it's like this whole duality that really isn't duality, like the whole good and bad. It's the same thing when you're coming from that standpoint, when coming to extremes. Acidic is when you're taking a bunch of sugar and a bunch of lactic acid, which is probiotics, and then a bunch of carbs, which is basically turns into sugar, converts into sugar in the body, to then go after issues. However, yes, probiotic lactic acid goes after, then stops the cancer virus. However, when you have so much lactic acid in your body, it destroys your vital organs, because what happens is you're weakening everything in your body by taking so much acid that even though you stop the cancer virus, you've basically weakened your body. You're not repairing the damage, and then your body's going to steal reserves. There's no reserves left. Guess what? The brain shuts down. The heart shuts down. You have a heart attack, and you won't be able to survive the heart attack because there's no reserves left. So even though we have discovered that, yes, every single component in the jelly juice separately is good for you in moderation, but it's also the chemical process. You just taking probiotics strictly for cancer, okay, but then you're going to throw the balance off the body. You're not going to repair the weakness, and some people will die of a heart attack because the weakening of their vital organs forces the body to go find the reserves. That's what you really have to understand. And some of you have very scant insurance policies. You don't have many reserves to choose from, and you're going to screw yourself up. Okay? So, but when I was studying all of this, I was studying everything individually, looking at the benefits individually, and then all my naysayers, my debunkers, were looking at everything individually as if it was something poisonous. And yes, when you take individual things, you can look from it from a poisonous aspect or a beneficial aspect. It's relative to the intention as well as the outcome. But what they fail to understand, and this is exactly the mentality in the allopathic holistic market, it's the synergy, it's the chemistry, it's the biochemistry is what makes a difference. So then I made that example of the kombucha, where you have so much lactic acid, so much sugar acid, because fruit sugar and sugar obviously creates acid. And then, yeah, you have, the micro and macronutrition, which isn't a lot in fruit or apple cider vinegar or anything like seaweed or whatever the hell that you're fermenting to make kombucha or ACV. That's not going to be enough as far as the nutrition. But it's the sugar acid and the lactic acid / probiotic is what's going to destroy the body. And that's what happened to my top part of my tooth when I slammed 2 or 3 kombuchas a day, eating crackers. That's what I thought was healthy before I just did the J juice. That was the summer before I started the J juice. When I was slammed, because I was hearing about probiotics, I was the end all be all, and kombucha is the end all be all. And I just took it to the extreme because I was dealing with my candida, thinking it was the reason why I was having PMDD. Yes, it was a factor, but it wasn't the only thing. I was also malnourished. I also had a lack of electrolytes. I had some processed food, but I was trying to eat like whole foods and vegan and vegetarian and staying away from the processed foods because the amount of sodium and the amount of chemicals, and playing the discrimination game, not realizing I was actually starving my body, turning to whole foods like fruits and vegetables, whole fruits and vegetables, and staying away from this, staying away from that, and then not taking in the right chemical process of micro and macronutrition, of electrolytes / trace minerals, and then the probiotics. Okay, so when I wrote down the oxygen, water, protein, fat, electrolytes, trace minerals, carbs, sugars, bacteria, parasites, and viruses, those are all components of the human body. That's what makes up the human body. And I was going to see if I can write like a graph, but it's really hard because I need to have like a dry erase board to actually show you the examples that when you modify levels of oxygen and water in the body, or you modify levels of bringing in oxygen, water, protein, fat, electrolytes, minerals, trace minerals, carbs and sugars, and bacteria, parasites, and viruses, you'll see how things get so out of whack when you have way more oxygen, less than water. You have too much water, less oxygen, less fat, less this. You play around with every single one of those. And let's say you bring in more carbs and sugars. and fats and bacteria and parasites. Guess what? You have a very imbalanced body, highly acidic, and then it's destroying your tissue. And then the body is stealing whatever reserves, electrolytes, as well as trace minerals from your body, from your bones. And this is why people that get sick with the flu have to go and get electrolytes, have to go get IV bags full of freaking electrolytes, which also has the glucose, okay? Because their body doesn't have enough, and so they are deteriorating fast, dehydrated, have all these issues. They go in and they're sucking in like 10 or 15, well, 3 or 4 bags in like 5 or 6 hours of those IV bags of electrolytes. And then finally they feel well balanced. Well, guess what? The hospital just gave you a bunch of minerals that you are lacking in your everyday world, and you have leaky gut, so you're basically have malabsorption, so you're not even negotiating the food supply correctly. No wonder people are. So look at all your friends and family and the kids that are out there. They're dealing with having to go to the hospital and get IV bags, or always dealing with continuous chronic illness. They have malabsorption because they came in with deficits. Parents already had trauma. Everybody that has a kid has trauma induced, intentionally or unintentionally. And so they're coming in with deficits, and no one's fixing the issues. All they're doing is managing the symptoms by throwing specific condensed conglomeration of elements that basically throw the balance off the body even more. And yes, their body adapts, but it adapts in such a cattywampus way that you're going to see glitches in your children, in the matrix, in your politicians, in your friends, in your family, and you're going to wonder why someone has an outburst, or someone has, an onset of some specific issue, or they trigger some kind of cancer, or they just die from a heart attack because there's no more reserves left. Okay, and so so what you bring to the table will determine how fast you go through your insurance policy, or how slow you go through it. Hold on. And nowadays, with people having children on top of traumatized bodies, these kids have very small insurance policies. They don't have a lot of time to figure it out. But you as parents had plenty of time to figure it out. And if you parents don't figure it out, your kids ain't going to ever really figure it out. They're already getting indoctrinated into the system of shortcuts, of managing their symptoms. And so you as parents, as well as you as adults that are influencing your environment, you have so much responsibility. But not everybody is cut out to be that influencer, so that's fine. Just exemplify. And if somebody asked you, hey, how come you still look great? How come 5 or 10 years later, wow, you look the same? What's your secret? And no, I'm not a vampire. No, I'm not this. You know why that guy died? That guy, Bruce Wilmot, died? Poor thing. Thanks, Krista. Why that guy died? Because he was in hospice. What does hospice mean? It means the system could do nothing else for him. He couldn't afford to take on chemotherapy or cannabis because it would weaken him. The body would then go and try to fix the weakness by stealing their reserves to go and patch it up. He had no minerals left to keep his heart going, to keep his brain going, to keep his lungs going. I would love to know what the actual autopsy. Yeah, it's natural causes. But when a person in hospice dies, one of the vital organs didn't get enough resources. It could have been a mini heart attack. It could have been a brain aneurysm. Okay? Because there was no more mineral reserves left to patch it up. Those of you that survive your symptoms, whatever they are, I don't care what they are, it means you had enough insurance in your body to keep you going. But it's a red flag. It's a dashboard idiot light that says, hey, something's going on here. We're going to patch it up with what you already have. But guess what? Your body is on a trajectory. You can only go through these symptoms for so long. Eventually, if you don't fix that issue that's causing you not to absorb the nutrition to keep an excellent amount of reserves, so where you don't feel symptoms, you're going to die. Symptoms are letting you know, your dashboard, that you're on the reserve tank. And even though your reserve tank allows you 50 to 60 miles, maybe your reserve tank not on JJ's, but your reserve tank in the matrix allows you maybe 50 to 60 years, if that. And that's really being generous. Some people have 5 or 10 years when they have major symptoms. So all the symptoms, whatever you're being diagnosed with, I don't care what it is, it's a major flag that you're losing your reserves. And now you're living off of fumes. Your fumes are your scant food supply, your discriminatory food supply. Those are the fumes. Those of you who have been diagnosed or are dealing with, I don't care what it is, a flu, a cold, something even as benign as a cold is a red flag on your dashboard letting you know you're losing reserves. You have 50 or 60 years. So if you're like 10 years old, and you're relatively healthy, and you have a cold, you're already tapping into your reserves. And it's just a matter of time. And relative to your environment, your lifestyle, will tell you how fast you're going to age or how slow. Maybe, a kid gets the J juice. They were on a fast track to maybe dying around, 30 or 40 or 50 because they have a thing lurking in their body. And then they do the J juice and they fix that weakness. Now they have a bunch of reserves. And so anytime they go into an environment that upsets the homeostasis, whether it's a virus that may give them antibodies, then they have the electrolytes to keep those antibodies at bay to also fix the weakness so you don't have to keep stealing reserves. They're never going to have an issue. So everybody has a chance every single day. If you're alive, you have every chance to change the trajectory, okay? So be very thankful that those of you who have lived through your symptoms. So the lady on Dr. Phil, I basically pretty much saved her. I had a 50% chance of saving her. No, actually I did save her because she had a 50% chance of dying if she didn't have the J juice. The J juice will give you the minerals regardless. But if you are in hospice and then this is the thing, when you're in hospice and you're drinking pineapple juice, guess how much acid is in pineapple juice? Guess how much acid is in pineapple juice?